So, when we talk about female protagonism, we're not just talking about adding a few more names to some old, dusty textbook. No, not at all. We are talking about a fundamental shift, a complete rewriting of how we understand history itself. It's a story about moving from the margins right to the very center of the narrative.
Okay, let's just dive right in with this really powerful idea from the philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, because it gets to the absolute heart of everything we're discussing. What she's saying is that the roles, the limitations, and even the very identity of woman have been built up, constructed by society over centuries. So this explainer, it's really a journey through how women fought to take that idea apart and build their own identities completely on their own terms.
So, what does protagonism actually mean in this context? Well, think of it like this. It's the journey from being a side character in a story written by somebody else to becoming the author and the main character of your own. And this isn't just about what one person can achieve. It's about occupying those critical spaces in politics, in science, in art, the places where the big decisions are made and where futures are actually shaped.
To really get our heads around this journey, we have to first look at where women were traditionally placed in the grand story of humanity. And a really fascinating place to start is the world of fiction, because art so often holds up a mirror to a society's deepest and sometimes unconscious values.
This right here, this charts a revolution on the page. I mean, for centuries, female characters were often just props, right? They were either the damsel in distress or the evil witch, basically just there to help the hero's story along. But then you started getting writers like Jane Austen or Charlotte Bronte, who created heroines with rich inner lives, with intelligence and desires that flew in the face of the status quo. It was a perfect reflection of a very real, growing demand for agency among women in the real world.
Now, this fight for representation, it didn't just stay in books. No way. It spilled out into the real world, and it became a physical, political battle for a place in the public square. And that whole transformation was really lit on fire by one of the biggest shakeups in modern history. The Industrial Revolution was this massive force that pulled millions of women out of the home and into factories. And on the surface, you might think, okay, this looks like a new kind of economic independence. But was it really an opportunity, or was it just a new kind of cage? 18. Just let that number sink in for a second. 18 hours. That was a typical workday for so many women and children in those early factories. The conditions, absolutely brutal. The environments were dangerous, and the pay was next to nothing. This wasn't empowerment. It was exploitation on a gigantic scale. And get this, by 1838, a massive 77% of the textile workers in England were women and children. The reason for that is pretty simple and pretty cynical. Employers saw them as docile, easy to control, and most importantly, a cheap source of labor. They could pay them way less than men for doing the exact same work. But out of that fire of exploitation, a powerful resistance was born. Women started to organize. You have these incredible figures like Clara Lemlech, who led a strike of 20,000 garment workers, and Emma Tenioka, who organized some of the most marginalized workers out there. They proved they were anything but docile. And right here in Brazil, the 1917 general strike saw huge female participation, with women demanding not just better pay, but basic human dignity. You can see so clearly here how the fight for economic rights just poured fuel on the fire for the fight for a political voice. It's like they realized, hey, if we can't vote, we can't change the laws that are keeping us in these horrible conditions. The suffrage movement went totally global, with New Zealand leading the charge way back in 1893. Then World War I came along and just accelerated everything, leading to a huge victory here in Brazil in 1932, when amazing figures like Bertha Lutz helped win the vote for literate women. Okay, so beyond the factory and the ballot box, there was another revolution going on. This one was a bit quieter, happening in labs and observatories. It was a fight for intellectual protagonism. If you ask someone who discovered the structure of DNA, they'll probably say Watson and Crick, right? I mean, it's the story we've all been told. But is it the whole story? The critical, game-changing breakthrough in understanding DNA came from an image called Photo 51. It was created by a chemist named Rosalind Franklin. Her data was the key. It was the essential piece of the puzzle for Watson and Crick's model. But here's the thing. They saw her data without her permission.
Franklin died before the Nobel Prize was given out, and for decades, her pivotal contribution was basically just a footnote in someone else's story. And Franklin's story, sadly, is part of this painful pattern. Lise Meitner did the foundational work on nuclear fission, but only her male partner got the Nobel. Ada Lovelace wrote the first computer algorithms 100 years before the first real computer was even built. Katherine Johnson's math literally got astronauts to the moon. And Hedy Lamarr, a famous actress, co-invented the technology that is probably in the phone you're holding right now. These weren't helpers, they were pioneers. And this legacy of breaking new ground in science, it absolutely continues today. Back in 2020, as the world was facing down a new pandemic, a team in Brazil, led by Dr. Jacqueline Goes de Jesus, was right at the forefront of the scientific response.
48. That's how many hours it took her team to sequence the genome of the SARS-CoV-2 virus after the first case was confirmed in Brazil. Just an incredible scientific achievement and such a powerful example of female leadership in a moment of true global crisis.
Now, the fight wasn't just happening in the workplace or the lab. It was also a battle for the soul of culture itself, as women grabbed the pen, the paintbrush, and the conductor's baton to share their own vision of the world. The writer Virginia Woolf argued that for centuries, women were denied the two things you absolutely need for creative genius: economic independence and personal space. I mean, without a room of your own, free from interruptions and money worries, how could you possibly create? It was such a simple but totally radical idea that connected the real material world to the inner world of the mind. And yet, so many broke through anyway. Just think of Frida Kahlo, who turned her own intense personal pain into universal, breathtaking art. Or right here in Brazil, Tarsila do Amaral, who didn't just paint, she visually defined a whole new modern Brazilian identity. And Chiquinha Gonzaga, she defied every single social rule to become the country's first female conductor, composing Ao Abre Alas, the very first carnival march, literally creating the soundtrack for a nation. So all of these struggles for economic rights, for a political voice, for scientific recognition, for artistic expression, all of them were building towards something even bigger, getting a seat at the table where the rules of the entire world are made. Okay, picture this. It's 1945. The world gathers in San Francisco to create the United Nations, and the Brazilian diplomat Bertha Lutz arrives with one single-minded mission. She faced huge resistance. Many delegates were saying that specifically mentioning women's rights was just unnecessary. So what does she do? She built an alliance, tirelessly lobbying delegates from all over Latin America and the world. And the result of her incredible determination, the UN Charter's preamble explicitly affirms faith in the equal rights of men and women. A victory with global consequences, all engineered by one woman's refusal to take no for an answer. These historic victories, they're the foundation we stand on, but they are not the end of the story. Let's take a look at how they connect to the challenges that are still very real today, because this fight for protagonism, it is far from over. This table really lays it out pretty clearly. On one side, you have a monumental achievement like winning the vote back in 1932. But then you look at today, and you see the challenge: chronic underrepresentation in political office. We see record numbers of women in the workforce, which is great, but the wage gap and that glass ceiling are still stubbornly there. The first woman entered Brazilian diplomacy way back in 1918, but more than a century later, senior ambassador roles are still overwhelmingly held by men.
This whole journey to claim protagonism has completely reshaped our world. These women proved that the story is never set in stone. Their story is a powerful foundation, but it's not finished. And that leaves all of us with a really important question to think about. What chapter is going to be written next?